Game loaded.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of Lessons Learned podcast with my friend here, Chapelmon. We are going live. Welcome to the program, chat. You're joining us for the first time. We're going to be talking about many subjects, including, but not exclusively, about fandom. In this case, we're going to be talking about sort of the dark side of fandom. But before we do that, and it seems that Twitch is having a little bit of problem trying to load. Yeah, finally. So once again, welcome to the program for those who are joining us for the first time. We're going to be talking about the dark side of fandom, and we're going to be talking about some news to kick off with. First of all, we're going to be talking about the Twitch. It has seemed to have won July, as has been declared. It had the biggest sales so far in the month of July in the United States, outpacing both PlayStation and Microsoft, according to the NDP, who tracks these sales. However, of course, the PlayStation still is the biggest seller of this current generation. Although one could argue that with the Twitch out and with the new platforms coming in, with the new half station out there and the upcoming Microsoft One X, we might be seeing a new generation, or at least half a generation. So it's a thing. But kudos for Twitch for staying there. Even though I went to the store this week and I couldn't find a Switch for some reason. There no,
really?
No, I couldn't find them.
The Walmart down the street from my house, every time I go there, they always seem to have like 3 in stock.
Yeah, well, Walmart. I've gone to Walmart. I haven't seen it. I went to Best Buy. I haven't seen it. Suppose if I want to buy it, I have to order it online. So there's that. If you Chad, if you have any problems with the audio or video, please let us know so that we can try our best to fix that. Other news. There's been a couple of news this week, but the one that really sort of got to me, I wouldn't say on a personal level, perhaps, but one that really impacted me was the harassment. I like to consider her to be a friend of the program, Laura K. Dale. This came about, and the facts are a bit fluid at this time, due to an interview that she did with John Total Halibut Bain of the Co-op Journal podcast and WTF series on YouTube and on Twitch. There've been different sources claiming that there were different reasons for the harassment, but of course harassment is wrong. Doxing is wrong, and I would like to take this opportunity to extend my sympathy and my support to Ms. Dale.
Same here.
Who is now the editor at Kotaku UK and who has an excellent track record of journalism, video game journalism. The irony, of course, is that the article in question was about harassment and how to deal with harassment, how YouTube personalities and small streamers and some others have dealt with harassment. I've had some harassment in my past on being on the internet. I even had at least one person essentially threatened me directly through email. So I cannot even imagine what it is to be bombarded with all this BS.
Yeah.
I'll probably make a video about it in my own channel about this, because I still sort of figured out the kind of ideas that I want to talk about. But we decided this is not the particular venue, so we are going to just stand by Miss Dale, and wish her the best of luck in her endeavors, because she deserves it. And
she does. She's a good person.
She is. And there's no reason whatsoever to justify this stuff. I mean, if you're angry, whatever, that's fine. But there are ways and there's ways. It kind of also ties in, and that's one of the reasons why I want to make my own video with current events. But this is mostly a gaming podcast, so the only thing I want to say about current events is fuck Nazis. That's it. barest minimal requirement for being a human being. That's all I'm gonna say. That's it. Yeah, it's like, yeah, no, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. This week has been rough for everyone.
Yeah, and my heart goes to the victims as well, both in Charlottesville as well, and it's in Barcelona. So there's that. You know. Now to a more cheery subject. Hopefully we can spend the hour discussing this, and in a way we already touched on it, and that's going to be last week we talked about Fandom. It didn't go as well as I planned. There's some technical issues, but well,
I didn't bring it. I left my sunglasses in the other room, so everyone has to stare at my dark circles.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about the dark side of Fandom. Last week we were discussing, and the part that did get recorded, a lot of the benefits of Fandom. And I like to reiterate that Fandom can be a very positive space. Can be welcoming, can be a place of exploration and expansion and acceptance. However, with any community, and the creator community and identity, there's always a dark side. And we've seen it, especially in video game spaces, where people can be very defensive about individual games, about the gaming or gamer identity. And I will not mention any particular group. I will only refer to it, if we do refer to it, as the movement. Because the movement, like shit, attracts flies. I'm sorry, but that's my opinion. If you do not agree, that's fine. But I'm just going to lay it out there. So we're going to be rambling about an hour or so about the subject. So let's start with, let's see what we can start with, I suppose, gating. I think gating would be a very good start in the sense of who gets to be part of a community, a fandom of a particular video game or gaming in general. I've seen this a lot. And I think that's to be sort of the first hurdle, right? You have to prove yourself as a fan, and often,
yes. and not even just a fan. Sometimes you have to be a hardcore fan. Sometimes it's not even just enough to demonstrate that you're a fan. You have to demonstrate your devotion to something.
Yeah, I like to say fandom should be an expression of love or affection or interest. And many times people in any fandom complain that the fandom is too small, that it doesn't get enough coverage, especially positive coverage. But at the same time, I often seen the gating effect, right? It's like, oh, you don't know enough about this. What are you doing here? You don't have the right vocabulary, etc. But the thing about it is that fandom is also about learning, right? You come into a fandom and you learn about what it is that you're interested in, right? And if you have severe gating where you constantly signaling to people you're not welcome, then how can your fandom expand and be diversified and grow and remain relevant? Because one of the problems with fandom is it can also be very stale. You can keep talking about the same subject over and over again, like we do with certain names that we're not gonna mention. So yeah, I mean, how do you introduce new blood, right? I mean, sometimes it can be infuriating when somebody comes in and it's like, oh, I'm going to ask this very basic question that everybody should know the answer to. It's like, but to them, it's a new question. You know, they could be trolling, but you should give them a chance, right? If you have suffered any particular episodes of gating,
I have not actually. I think one of the most common gatings or gating that I tend to be gender based. My best friend, his wife is a gamer, and when she started getting into gaming, she started playing a lot of first-person shooters, and she received a lot of harassment just for being a woman and playing, even though I'm a dude. I am awful at Call of Duty. My main strategy is panic and hide.
I'm a single-player gamer myself, so usually I don't, you know. I find it very hard to find communities. And in fact, I wanted to get into Overwatch, but I sort of dreaded the idea of going in there and being, well, YouTube, sorry, but I'm going to say this, shit. And then it's like everybody, oh, you suck and stuff like that. So that's also a problem. It's like, even when you don't particularly suffer from gating directly. The expectancy of it, the fact that you might encounter it, at least to me, has put me off. I think it happened to me in my Xbox OC days. There were some games. I remember one game that I enjoyed. It was a Mech Warrior game that I enjoyed as a single player. No problem. When I got into multiplayer, oh dear God in heaven. And I know the Xbox Live has a bad reputation for stuff like this, but it wasn't every single game. Like, I played Halo 2, and I mean, I was dying every 5 seconds, but I didn't hear constant jeering. But in the Mech Warrior one, damn. I mean, it was like, and that game wasn't even that popular back in the day, right? Partly because it was a very arcadey game compared to the Mech, it was a BattleTech game, and BattleTech is a very tactical game. This was a very arcadey version, but people just hated it. And there was another one which was High Road to Revenge. That's the subtitle. I forgot the title of it, which was a sort of a 1920s, 1930s dogfighting game, which is exclusive for Xbox. And I was
Red Skies or something.
Crimson Skies. High Road to Revenge. I was pretty good in that game because I played a lot of flight sims and space combat sims, and I played the hell out of that game, and I was pretty good, right? But again, I wasn't jeering at people, and people were not jeering at me. It was like, oh, that guy, okay, and they were pretty fast, and I died or whatever it was. And the maps were pretty limited. It was basically, they were the game maps that were used for multiplayer. And again, I didn't suffer that. But I think some of those experiences, also because I guess I get bored very quickly on multiplayer, but I tend not to go multiplayer because of, again, the gating effect. Like, you don't, since all games have a learning curve, and usually multiplayer doesn't play exactly a single player, you have to get that learning curve, and the gating effect is like, well, we're not going to let you learn this game. It's like, but I want to learn, but you're being dicks to me, and well, I can play this game single player, so screw you all,
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I've never experienced that type of harassment, is that back when I used to play on Xbox Live, I always played with the same people over and over. So any new people that I met were through friends.
Mm-hmm.
So they were kind of my filter. But I've heard horror stories from them about, like, oh man, I played with someone else. They were total jerks. They kept name calling me over and over, and just harass over and over again. Just because, either you're not good enough, or, oh, how dare you be too good that you're beating me.
Yeah. And by the way, there's a difference between being with friends and sort of have the banter of friends, right? The jokes and stuff like that, stuff that's allowed between friends, and then having a complete stranger just fill your ear with, homophobic and transphobic and misogynist and just pure shit stream on your ears. It's like, dude, I'm trying to win here. I'm just, okay, and it's been proven. Many studies have proven that usually the people who are the angriest in multiplayer games are the people who are the worst at the game. So they're basically complaining because they don't have the skill set. They're good enough to stay in the game, and they want to stay in the game, but they're not good enough to actually master the game. And so they tend to then harass other people. It's like, oh, it's your fault that I'm this crappy, right? It's like, dude, you're not helping your case whatsoever, right? Screaming into the microphone, into your cheap ass $2 microphone that came with your Xbox 360,
those
doesn't
things
help.
always fall apart.
Doesn't help anybody, right? It just doesn't. One thing I have seen in many forums is what I like to call the angry backlash. And I think there's also, again, it's a sort of internal forum, internal fandom where you state a unpopular opinion, right? Or you go against a popular opinion, and oh boy, especially if you criticize the game, right? Like, or an aspect of the game is like, whoa, wow. And all of a sudden people are like, how dare you, right? And that's, I think, it's a part of where people can't tell the difference between themselves and the object of their affection. And that can be very problematic.
Oof. Yeah. You can criticize the thing you love, people.
Which is kind of the point of being a fandom, right? Criticism, this is the thing, is that people tend to, in popular culture, the definition of criticism is almost always negative. But if you were to, I hate to say this, but if you were to look at a dictionary, criticism in itself is a neutral term. You can have negative criticism, you can have aggressive criticism, you can have positive, constructive criticism. I think the reason is, again, because fandom is about communities, but also it's a group, almost like a tribal situation. People feel the need to defend the tribe against the outsider, or the would-be insider that sort of wants to take over or dominate the group, perhaps. And they feel that they have to go like, no, this is, if you say this, you're crossing a line that I'm not willing to put up with, right? And I've seen epic fights about this, where it really doesn't amount to much of anything, but there it is, right? And I have to block people on certain platforms. So it's like, you know what, you're just too much. I'm out. No way. Rare, but it happens. But it has happened to me where I just have to either block people out or just get out of the discussion. It's like, no, this is just too much. And it doesn't help anybody. Because ironically, the reason why people give this kind of criticism is not to hurt other people, because they want a better product. They want better games, right? They just and they want to discuss the situation. Like, my distaste for microtransactions and pre-orders come from the idea that I want a better business model. I had a discussion with a couple of friends of mine. Real life, we play Dungeons and Dragons, and we've been friends for years. But I mentioned the fact that Shadow of War had microtransactions, and they were not necessarily aggressive, perhaps, but rather was they basically mounted this defense of something that I thought, well, why would you defend this? Why defend microtransactions? Unless it's a free-to-play game, right, from the get-go, why would you defend microtransactions in a freemium plane, especially in a freemium single-player game?
Exactly. You're essentially paying for the privilege of giving them more money to play the game.
And it's just baffles me. There, of course, there's the aspect of social media. And okay, I want to relate a story, I suppose. And I'm sorry I take it over the podcast by just talking about it.
Oh, no, it's fine.
There used to be a site called Clipmarks back in the day, when Mozilla Firefox was the thing.
Bigger.
It was the browser that almost everybody used, and they had the apps, and what do we call them? They were not apps. They had none of them, and then basically you added programs to Firefox. One of them was Clipmarks, and Clipmarks basically was designed for you to do kind of like clipping tool to clip blogs and newspapers, and pages. It would allow you to take a relatively small, but with pictures and a quote, and automatically the algorithms would have the links to it, etc. And you could share them. You could put them on your blog, as saying that, just cut and paste, like in Blogger, for example, or other sites, or many sites today have similar features. Or you can also share them in the website that they had, the dedicated Clipmarks website.
So it's sort of like making a scrapbook out of newspaper articles and stuff. Like, hey, look, I found this cool article.
Yeah.
Or this cool piece from a site.
Yeah, basically that's what it was. That's what we call clips, right? Like clipping a newspaper or a magazine. And so most people, what they did, would share YouTube videos. They would share articles about kittens and puppies and cute pictures and photography and whatnot. But this was during the Bush years. So yes, we're gonna touch briefly on politics, but I'm not gonna. Just as an example. And of course, the politics at the time, people might not remember, especially millennials might not remember that it was very polarized, especially around the Iraq War. And so it quickly became a place where it was extremely right-wing, left-wing, right? And people started attacking each other. And it was it got to the point where the designers of clip marks, who had this sort of, I would say now increasingly old-fashioned view of the internet, like a free zone. We don't regulate. We have terms of we have terms that you have to agree with, but in terms of service, but that was it, right? And they were very lenient, like we don't get involved, etc., etc. They eventually sold the app, the site, to, I believe it was what's this? Not Fortune 500. It's not Fortune. Yeah, I think the Wall Street Journal, I think, is the one that bought it. No, Forbes bought it, and by that time, essentially, the situation got so ugly that they driven away a lot of people out. So essentially, it became a dead site, and I left, and some other people left as well. And it kind of shows when people, especially on the internet, take these extreme positions, and not simply express their positions, which is fine, I suppose. Well, barring what I just said in the beginning of the program, of course. But they went out of the way to antagonize other people. Like, they would go into the comment sections and just, attack them and this and that. And they would make clips to show how wrong these other people were. And it made the situation unpalatable. People just got tired of all the nonsense, right? And they just left.
So yeah, essentially the community became so toxic that it pretty much killed the community from within.
Mm-hmm. And that's what happens. And we've seen some of that stuff happen in Reddit, on the chants. It almost happened to Twitter. Although, depending on who you are, you might think that has already happened, and you might be thinking that it's on its way to happening or never happened. Depends on who you are. And, it's very selective. And I think it brings social media as a sort of interesting
beast
when it comes to fandom, because one of the things that gets happen is the moment someone steps in, there's a moderator or somebody uses any tools given to them to control what they see and have some control, then censorship is the first word that gets uttered. Well, right?
Yeah.
Just like here, if you were to make a comment on my on the chat, and you're welcome to do so, that's great. But here's the thing: Twitch has given me and everybody who uses a platform a certain types of controls. You might be very passionate about something that we're talking about, right? And you say, I express your opinion. That's fine. But each Twitch user and each channel has a set of rules. And the thing about it is, and this also goes to being basically a troll, is that while trolls, regardless of the fandom, claim to be about free speech and other people having thick skins, whatever, usually what they are is about control. What they want is to be able to control the roost, right? And what happened in clip marks, I've seen it happen before and after in many communities, especially smaller ones, but even big ones can suffer from this, is that no matter what, if you let the trolls take over, they're going to drive people away. And then what's going to happen is that the trolls are going to be the ones left. They're going to be able to rule the roost by themselves, and then they're going to turn on each other, right? And they're going to kill the community. So anytime you feel that you're being, that you go into a chat in Twitch or on YouTube, whatever, people just sort of, the people in charge put the brakes on something, you have to make a decision of whether or not this is the right community for you. There might be a community for you out there, right? But always with a caveat that, again, if you're in a fandom, if you're in a community, it should be about growth and enjoyment and sharing ideas and not ceasing control over it, which I think it's part of that idea of fandom and ownership, that we want to be able to sort of have a modicum of control, but it can get too much. Now for going back to gaming, the interesting angle I think a lot of people don't touch about is, and this is personal opinion, but here we go. I feel that, especially the AAA industry, is not only aware of fandoms, and this also happens in movies and television, particularly in video games, but they have sort of taken a very aggressive move to create and manipulate fandoms, right? With hype campaigns, people pre-ordering and all that. A lot of it is, we are going to give you the sense that we're catering to you personally, but not really, because, that's not something that can be sustainable. And also trying to manipulate that. And often what happens is, I feel that they bait the beast. And then the beast bites back. It's no excuse for people act, shittily, like shit, right? Harassing people, whatever. That's no excuse. But knowing that you're playing with fire, AAA industry still kind of gets burnt. I mean, we talked about here before about No Man's Sky. One of the problems with No Man's Sky was there were a lot of promises they made, or implicit rather than explicit, right? A lot of hints and other stuff. And when the game came out, there was nothing there, right? And so you had a hardcore community of people who were fans of a product that didn't exist, who became staunch defenders of it, and then would go out of their way to attack journalists and commentators and other people just based on any negative news that might or might not be about No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
And it's taken them that. And it's taken them over a year to now include a lot of the features they promised that may have been a year, when the game was actually released.
Yeah, kind of, but not really.
Yeah. That's another thing, is like when I talked about the patching culture, and I think a lot of players who get defensive about this, the idea of
put it out now and then fix it later.
Yeah. And increasingly that seems to be the problem with many games, especially in the AAA space. A lot of people, they defend patching like, well, you prefer not to get game at all, right? Or, this is always good. They always fix it later. It's like, yeah, but at some point, it's going to be broken, right? And again, they can get away with it. And I made a video also about microtransactions, people defending microtransactions because of the stuff we talked about. Criticism of the thing becomes criticism of the person. A fear, perhaps, that if they don't support the developer, even though most of this money goes to the publisher, not the developer. The
fandom will disappear. The
object,
the franchise will die, or even the developer might go under.
Yeah. Well, there have been cases, for example, Activision, at least one time, closed an entire studio after the game was released and the game was successful. Like, yeah, well, we just cutting costs. You're like, but the game was successful. Yeah, but doesn't matter. That's our decision to make, I've seen quite a bit of that around Mass Effect Andromeda. Like, any hints that Andromeda might be the last game in the series, it's met with a lot of dread by some people, right? And stuff like that, right? Now, of course, the remake, remaster side of things, appealing to nostalgia, remaking, remastering games over and over again, asking you to pay the same amount of money for this same old game time and time again. Call of Duty, Modern Warfare.
Yeah. The other day I heard, I think I was watching some news video and they mentioned that they're releasing an HD remake of Okami. I'm like, wait a minute, didn't they already release that? I just finished that like a couple months ago. I'm like, again? Like, that was a great game, but like, really? You're re-releasing it again?
Yeah. When every new platform gets a HD remake, etc., which means less original content, or at least iterations of it. For every Zelda Breath of the Wild, we're gonna get another HD remake of Wind Waker, or Pac-Man or something,
or Ocarina of
Time or something. It's like, well, they're great games, but come on, at some point, you just gotta let go. And I want a new game, but because you have these fandoms, these people who clamor for these games, there's a market for them, which is not entirely bad, but that's another thing. You can also misread fandom. I think we talked about this before. It's like, I always say that the number of people who actually buy a game is always going to be larger and the people who claim to be fans of the game, even if it's a factor of one. Like you can have like 51% versus 49%. The 51% is always going to be the people who buy the game, who like it, versus the 49% people who like, who like it first, like fans first, and that's why they buy it. So you always have to have the balancing act, and that's another situation as well, right? And even talking more about the identity of what it is to be even a gamer, right? The whole idea of defending your identity.
That came up like a couple years ago, where it's like, what exactly is a gamer? Are people who play cell phone games or cell phone app games, Candy Crush, considered gamers? Do they fall in that category? Are they or aren't they?
And it also prevents some serious discussions. I mean, I'm basically talking about my channel myself, but for example, I posted a video about whether video games have or not a fourth wall. It's one of the videos that got in the most negative aspects to it. And it's just a question, right? It's why does it have a fourth wall? It's on mechanics and how you experience video games. It's just a question, but the people that reacted to it, and some other forums reacted again, I don't say violently, of course, it's the internet, but they were upset by the very idea that video games do not have a fourth wall. Like the idea that your video games, and that's another thing, it's like one of the things that happens, especially in video game fandoms, is that people are always pining for video games to be like movies and television and theater and books, right? And so if the video games don't have a fourth wall, then they're not like movies, right? They're not like established modern audiovisual media, right? The fact that it could be different, and if it's different, it's still on the margins.
It's invalid somehow.
Yeah. Which I think stymies a lot of discussions. In fact, even the dreaded phrase, "this is not a game," is so loaded with gating and other aspects.
The walking simulator, it seems to be like the most famous word right now, or the popular term to saying, "Oh, this isn't a game; it's a walking simulator." Like it somehow is demeaning or reduces the value of a game as a game.
Well, that's a discussion. I'm probably going to have a discussion some other time as well. And we're going to get to it, but it sort of short circuits the discussion, because it's about what do you feel is a game, mostly because you enjoy a particular product, versus the merits of both that individual product and the whole thing. Right? We can really have, especially in gaming discussion, we're not having, I think, some of the discussions we should have, because part of the reason is that the people who also are critics and media personalities are also fans, and say like they enjoy things that are called walking simulators. If you say that's not a game, then they feel like you're telling them what they enjoy is wrong, versus which should be the people who should be the most honest discussions about what constitutes a game. But you can't have that discussion because there's that confusion between the object and the person, right? That to criticize the thing is to criticize the person. I remember seeing an article in The Guardian, like, oh no, don't let these other people tell you what it is in a game, right? Which eventually The Guardian was, the person that was saying, no, don't validate them, validate me. It's like, I don't want to do either. I want to have an honest discussion about what is and isn't a video game, because I want better games again, right? But that sense of fandom, of ownership, of search for validation can get in the way.
Yeah, I think it also goes back to that old argument of whether video games are a form of art as well. Mm-hmm. That was another one.
Yeah, that's another one. And also politics in video games, right? Are there such things as are games political? It's like, well, yes, because they exist in the real world, and the real world has politics. That's it.
Sometimes it's sometimes it can there could be symbolism there. Some games can be products of the time they were made in or developed in. You got you got all those war games. The modern warfare are probably slightly I would say probably inspired by recent events, recent wars.
Yeah.
Or sometimes, or even then, you can say they're inspired by more recent events to try to avoid those recent events.
True.
It's like, oh yeah, we're totally at war right now with the Russians and not anyone from the Middle East.
Yeah, and we talked about this in the normalization, right? It's everything in many ways can have a political dimension. How important is that political dimension to any given game, right? Unless you're playing something very basic like Pac-Man, right, or Pong, it's it's so devoid of almost anything. It's just like a couple of squares hitting another square. It's like, okay, fine, very difficult to add politics to this. But anything that has any semblance of a story, right? Anything that has a semblance. Anytime, for example, I'm going to talk about GTA games. GTA games are extremely political because they're parodies, and they parody everything, right? It's a very particular sort of view, a Northern English or Scottish, British view of politics in general, right? Especially American politics. So they're very political. You may or may not agree with some of the views, etc., but they're there and they parody everything. So politics has always been in the forefront. I remember playing GTA Vice City, particularly, and that was a very political game, very critical of certain aspects of the 1980s and Reaganomics, and also reflecting politics of the day as well, like early 2000s and the politicians through the mirror of the 1980s. Very political game. Also a lot of fun, but there you go, right?
And then of course, GTA always shines a light on the gaming community as a whole every time a new one's announced, because that's when it seems like the mainstream media or even just regular people in general are suddenly aware of the video game community, because oh no, a new GTA game is out. It's known for its violence and strong sexual and drug use, and
which, by the way,
these things that are related with politics.
Which, by the way, GTA in UK, when they were doing marketing in UK in the 1990s, they deliberately courted controversy to sell the game. So yeah, they were not shying away from, and sometimes GTA, Rockstar and their parent company have been burned by going a little too far, and sometimes most of the time they just reap the benefits, right? So again, being defensive of video games at times. I'm talking about the movement here for those who are not don't get the memo. And saying that games are not political because they want to defend their games and their experience. Like, if it's political, then we could be in the wrong side of politics or history. We don't want that, right? It's like people say, for example, a movie's a movie. It's like, well, no, a movie can be a movie and then some, right?
Yeah, and then of course there's people who don't want to get involved and don't want to just kind of play dumb. It's like, oh no, I just want to enjoy this video game without having to think, even though there's clearly a message there.
Yeah,
I mean, which that's fair. If you don't want to think, that's fine, but don't pretend it's not there.
And don't go after people who want to have the discussion.
Yeah,
right. Which is another thing. And also when we talk about video games and video game fandoms, and we talked this before, we're also talking about fandoms around people, personalities, on YouTube, on Twitch,
or even or social media. Even developers, like you got a fandom around Hideo Kojima. Mm-hmm. There's people that I know. There's one YouTuber, I think Young. Yeah, he seems to follow. His channel is not just Hideo Kojima, but there's a lot of it that focuses on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, the thing is like, oh, let's be critical. If someone is critical of Hideo Kojima, for example, like his decision to have Quiet, the character on his last game, be less than conventionally dressed, even though she spends most of the time in the desert, right? And sand, as we all know, is coarse and gets everywhere. And then he sort of like came, oh, you're going to be ashamed, probably a mistranslation, about criticizing the character because she breathes through her skin. Come on, Hideo. Kojima-san, you just wanted a pretty girl in a bikini. Come on.
Because there's I believe there is another character from a previous game that has something similar, except that he absorbs the sun through his skin, and he is covered up as can be.
Yeah, it's an older man who's also like a sniper, and it's like I think it's from SGF 3.
It's like how come he's not running around naked to reap the benefits of his skin?
Because Kojima-san didn't find him attractive. Let's be honest.
Yeah. It's like, just say it.
Just say it. I mean, come on. It's like Nier Automata came out, and when they asked the developer why essentially the main character, one of the main characters, running around in a skirt, and a skirt, and there's a lot of panty shows. Like, well, I like pretty girls. That's why it's there, because I'm gonna be playing for hours, and must give you something pretty to look at, right?
Yeah.
You may not agree with that, but that's a more honest answer.
Yeah, there's times where, again, as we're talking about, developers bring up a defense for some criticism that of a certain aspect of their game, and then fans either will attack that particular studio for whatever they say, or they'll come to their defense.
Mm-hmm.
And it could get nasty sometimes.
Yeah, that's another thing about fandom. I think it's sort of the polarizing effect, right? It's like everything, when we talk about Darkside here, it's everything taken to the extreme. Like, oh, either love it or hate it. And while we should always be careful about the golden mean, right? Because such thing doesn't exist. There is often a vast middle ground with a lot of points in between that again get ignored or run over when people sort of rush forward to make these take these positions, right? It's not that somewhere in the middle you're always going to be okay. It's more like you're ignoring a lot of things that should be discovered and discussed because you sort of entrench yourself either in the defensive or the offensive, right? Defending something to the death, virtually, hopefully, nobody dies in these battles, or attacking, almost in the same way.
Your audio levels are dropping a bit.
Oh, sorry, it must be that I'm away from the mic. I apologize. Let me just put them. I boosted them up. Oh, it's okay now?
Oh, it still sounds kind of low.
Kind of low. Speaker. Sorry about that, guys. I'm just checking the audio.
It's not on my end because you're kind of like starting to go a little lower now and kind of staying there.
Oh, okay. It might be the calibration here. Just a second. Oh, come on. Okay. Yeah, we do have these problems, folks. That's why we always do the shows live.
There you go. You're back up a little.
Yeah. Okay. It must be that I'm, mic distance. This mic is very sensitive. If I step up too far.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, you can notice. So, back to what we were talking. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah, the streams. So that we lose a lot of points in between. If we don't, if we take this extreme percent, this is middle ground, right? And the middle ground is a very vast area, right? Doesn't guarantee that you're right if you stand anywhere near it, but it's certainly someplace that should not be completely ignored. Being too defensive about something without actually listening to what the other person is saying is a problem that I encountered a lot. and essentially it shuts down conversation. I think that to me is the most frustrating thing possible, right? Because for every troll there's out there, and they exist, I dealt with them, we all dealt with them, there's a lot of people who just have genuine questions and just want to genuinely express themselves, right, in one way or another, right? I think that ironically the best way to do that, to encourage well, not ironically, just the way it is, encourage good conversation, is by setting some clear ground rules from the get-go. In fandom, and what is and isn't allowed, and why. Do not assume that people know the obvious, because especially if they're new, they don't, and they're more likely to make these mistakes. Like, oh, I thought this was allowed, right? If they seem to be making the same mistake over and over again, you might go like, yeah, maybe this is not the place for you. But now the question is, what leads people, and this is sort of extremely dark, the one that the media tends to focus a lot, into these sort of harassment campaigns? Why people go to that extreme? It seems to be tied with outrage, again, with the idea perhaps that you're under personal attack. But even then, I mean,
sometimes it's the power of anonymity. Just because you can hide behind the computer screen, that it enables you to say things that you feel, but in person you would you have more control over it, because you have consequences that you would have to live with. As opposed to online, you don't. You hide behind a screen name, and what you say, you can say the most horrible things, and it's never going to come back and hurt you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one aspect of it. The other, I think you've mentioned it, to where the person might feel that this thing that they're a fan of is an extension of themselves. So any kind of criticism or can be seen as an attack of themselves. So they act like a wounded animal that's being cornered and is giving it their all.
Yeah, and I also think there's groupthink as well, right?
Yeah, then that's even that can be even worse when you start getting a group mentality of all this negativity.
People, you say something, people agree with you, or somebody says somebody, you agree with them, and sort of starts a ball rolling, and somebody does the thing, well, they did it, and this person did it, so I'm going to do it because I'm going to join in, and again, I'm part of the group, and that's the group behavior, and sort of like a mob mentality, just sort of rushes forward in a storm of electrons toward whoever happens to be the target of this. And like we mentioned in the beginning, you can have situations where you have several actors, but you don't really know what's going on. And when you rush to judgment, you just becoming part of this groupthink, and just the only person that's going to look bad is you, right? Because I think that's the ultimate. That's the ultimate thing. It's like there comes a point where what you're saying has nothing to do with the subject or the person you're attacking, or the object that you're discussing, and it's just a reflection of who you are. And then we end up with these cycles where somebody says something, and then or somebody gets mobbed, and then that person says, "Oh, I'm being attacked," and then the people attacking get mobbed back, and it's a whole lot of mess for nothing,
Yeah, you end up like that mess, the movement that happened a couple of years ago.
Yeah. And also I think, and talking about the movement, just want to light, is that, again, we should, although we concentrate on video games, we should be aware that none of these things are unique to video games, right?
No.
They're not even unique to social media or certain age groups. It's just that we have our particular flavor of it, perhaps.
Yes.
But they're not unique, and they're often interconnected. Like if you follow the strands of people saying certain things, and you find them in certain political groups, and you find them certain viewpoints, like, okay, this is...
Or even sometimes common fandoms, too.
Exactly, yeah. So it's not the off remark, right? You have my advice to anybody who listens to this program, you have a right to be angry. Certainly. Nobody can take that away from you. I would not deny you or attempt to deny your feelings. But you should, and you're wholly responsible for your actions. Remember
and how
that.
you express your anger too.
Even if you don't think there are going to be consequences, there are always consequences. You might not feel them yourself. Someone else probably will, right? And usually these things, because the person, like Chabon said, it's that person who ditches it out usually doesn't immediately feel the repercussions, right? They don't necessarily, they can do it on with anonymity. That doesn't mean that somewhere else, when you go and express something or there, you can then other people pile up on you, right? And that, by the way, should not be an excuse to continue doing this, because we got to work on breaking the cycle. So, yeah. I mean, the reason why I think we talked about this, we were planning to talk about this before, but recent events, I think, has just propelled it to our forefront. So that's probably my final thought on that. Chabomon, if you have, I know that you haven't said much of anything.
I've been pretty quiet today because I tend to try to stay on the positive side, not think too much of the negative. My life's been this week has just been negative. Unnecessarily, honestly. But essentially, be a decent human being. Treat people with respect. Treat them as respectful as you think you deserve.
Yeah, and my final piece of advice is, and this I'm going to say it every time I get, and hopefully people listen to this because I'm close enough to the mic. Criticism of the thing, of the object, even as the object you love, is not the same as criticism of the self. That is, of you. There's some criticisms that are like, if I say people who like X are stupid, then I'm criticizing you for liking a thing. If I say X is stupid, well, that's saying that X is stupid. Whether I can back up that opinion or not, that's a different story. But they're not the same. And we all of us, because I've suffered from this as well, sometimes get lost in that space in between. So we're coming up to the hour. Wasn't as cheerful as I thought this video was going to be, this podcast. But as always, I'd like to thank Chapon. Chapon, can you tell them where we can find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on YouTube under Chapomon. I just released a video actually kind of talking about Digimon. Not a fandom. I'm too heavy. I'm not into the fandom as much in that, but it's something I really enjoy and I like to follow from time to time.
And you can find me here, of course, on Twitch under Lessons Learned 1 and on YouTube under Lessons Learned. As always, if you like this or any video program or podcast on our channels, please don't hesitate to comment and subscribe, and we shall see you when we see you. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.